And away we go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what's going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you are listening anywhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk. And that's at Coffee Talk Live, at Coffee Talk Live. Hopefully I spelled that right. And throw that up on the screen. That's where you can find us. I am also simultaneously podcasting to Prepper University. But again, and I keep reminding everyone that soon here, that will no longer be a thing. As of the first week of June, I will pull away from putting the podcast on Prepper University so that I can concentrate on the core value of that channel more specifically, instead of sharing the podcast, which I originally did really to save that channel because of how badly YouTube was pounding it. But I'd like to get back to prepping on that channel specifically. You can also find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat, and you can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. And naturally, I do try to read through as many of the comments as is reasonable, and I'll say hello to some of the people that have chimed in. C. Helter is with us today, as well as Dragon, Brian. Legends is here. Oh, he says his company is shutting its doors in September. Wow. And he started the job when I started the podcast. John is here looking for cats. There's no cats in the room. And Lucky is here. Yeah, new location. You see that this is not the same place. I am moving to a new office space. Here. So this is probably where you'll be seeing this from now on. Again, if you are subscribed to Prepper University and you like the podcasts, please do subscribe to the Coffee Talk on YouTube so that you will not lose contact with that podcast. Basically, so that you can continue to join us on that podcast. And I see Fluke Man has joined us. Had an altercation before I get going here. Had a little bit of an altercation. There's a neighbor who was complaining about a cable. I have we have Xfinity, and Xfinity ran a new line, but our lines are buried, and they can't bury the line yet. So it's exposed, and a piece of it is touching his property. And keep in mind, we're in the middle of nowhere. There's a piece of it touching the property, and he's fussing about it. As a matter of fact, he came and he fussed to the wrong person because he gave both barrels apparently to the guy from the alarm company. And then he came and told me, he was like, your neighbor, man, what a way to let people know. I mean, who does that? I mean, it's a utility company. And Prime Mover says, guess the wife took everything. Hope you still have the cats. No, the wife didn't take anything from me. And you may see her soon, as a matter of fact. Armored is here. Yeah, new office with red swing line. Yeah, Phil is here early. Good. John says, will you be able to have office cats? I hope so. I'll see if I can get them in here. I'll bring cats anywhere I can. Again, I'm currently taking care of 15 of them, which is good for me. 15 cats. And so there we are. But yeah, neighbor being a butthole over a cable that I have no control over, and then takes it out on a worker who's out there. Why don't you come talk to me? You want to talk to me? Come talk to me. He didn't want to talk to me. He wants to give the repairman that's out there a hard time, and then he has to come and relay the message. And he was like, "What's up with your neighbor, man?" I don't know, because I don't talk to that guy. D'Lo is here. D'Lo is here. But no, I didn't run away, and I'm not getting divorced or anything like that. It's a new location, and you'll be seeing the cats sooner or later, and you'll probably be seeing the wife too as we get ready to jump off here. I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it on in time today. I'm like up to my eyeballs busy, but we may as well go ahead and get rolling here. Fox News article. You've probably seen this, and I'll get to the thumbnail in a minute. You saw a row of prisoners on the thumbnail, a bunch of mugshots. Real interesting story there. A Fox News article, Schumer ripped for placing blame on Trump and Doge for the deadly Mexican Navy crash in New York City. Yeah, I'm sure you heard about that. There was a Mexican Navy ship, but it's a clipper ship. It's an antique ship for decoration, for display, for parades, for events, that sort of a thing. Sort of like old Ironsides, the USS Constitution, which is an official naval vessel still, but they rarely do anything with it. It's basically a floating museum. That's what this was. This isn't a real naval ship. It might have been in like 1750, but it's not a real naval ship now. It's just a decoration on water. And they had an accident. They hit the Brooklyn Bridge. And according to Schumer, somehow that's Trump's fault that they had some kind of problem with their navigation. So Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was ripped on social media over the weekend for suggesting President Trump was partially to blame for a Mexican Navy ship losing control in Conyers. That was a mess. After being fully briefed on last night's Brooklyn Bridge accident, one thing is predominantly clear. There are more questions than answers as it relates to exactly how the accident occurred, according to Schumer. Okay. It was a 150-foot tall Mexican Navy training ship with a name I can't pronounce, reportedly experienced mechanical issues before the masts crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge, which killed 2 cadets that were on board. Bridges serve as critical transportation arteries for commerce, emergency response, and daily travel, and many span key waterways that are vulnerable to both natural and man-made threats. The Coast Guard plays a crucial role in monitoring and securing these areas, deterring potential terrorist attacks, preventing illegal activities. And this is all Schumer talking, I believe. And responding quickly to emergency. At the same time, the maintaining of the structural integrity and safety of America's bridges is critical to the economy and the well-being of communities. A failure or attack on a major bridge could disrupt the supply chains, endanger lives, and cause massive economic loss. It is unacceptable that the Trump administration is potentially jeopardizing our national and economic security, as well as American lives. So, and there you see a picture of the ship for those of you who can see. It's wooden masts on what they call a training ship. It's a floating decoration. Okay. And they steered incorrectly, lost control, and hit the bridge. I don't understand what the hell that has to do with the Trump administration. But according to Schumer, that somehow equates to Trump being responsible. Trump is responsible for the clipper ship steering incorrectly into the Brooklyn Bridge because they lost control somehow. I don't know. Maybe did Trump graduate from Hogwarts? Was there some spell he was supposed to cast to prevent ships from going off course? How the hell does that equate? That sounds really stupid. And he's been getting ripped to pieces on social media for coming up with like such a lame, like Whoopi Goldberg on The View worthy comment. Armin says the neighbor sounds very California. Well, he has a for sale sign in front of his house, so hopefully he'll be gone soon. I don't know him really anyways. Caps says, I saw the short about McDonald's cookies. I'm wondering what exactly is in them. Everything but chocolate, apparently. It's not cookies. It's actually their smoothie. And there's like little teeny chocolate chips in it or something. But apparently they're not. Apparently they're artificial. So they have to give you a breakdown of what potentially could be in them, except for chocolate. Somebody commented on there something to the equivalent of, oh, just because it doesn't say chocolate on that list doesn't mean there isn't chocolate there. There's other ingredients. You know, when I go to the store and I pick up like Ghirardelli's chocolate baking chips, you know what the ingredients says? Cacao, which is the chocolate plant. It says chocolate. 80% cacao, 70% cacao. Might be a little sugar in there. It's not soy, not emulsifiers, not tree nuts. Okay. And Monkey has joined us. Glad you could make it today. But according to Chuck Schumer, apparently that ship going off course is somehow the fault of the Trump administration. And dare I say, old Donald himself is somehow responsible for this. He must have gone to Slytherin House. Must have gone to Slytherin House. That makes no sense. This is where it's for people like this where you get the phrase Trump derangement syndrome. Because he just couldn't help himself. He had to tie it in to Donald Trump somehow. I'm waiting for the next earthquake so he can blame Trump for that too. Maybe he thinks Trump is Superman. Maybe he saw one of those comic books where it does parodies of Donald Trump and he looks like a superhero. And he's going to fly, like in the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, he's going to fly under the San Andreas fault line and push the rocks back up. It's pretty stupid. That's pretty stupid. I just wanted to throw that out there. This is how these are your lawmakers. These are your lawmakers. These are the people in charge of the country. It's scary. You should be afraid because they're crazy. They're crazy, or they're stupid, or they want you to think everybody's stupid. Again, I don't think they're as dumb as they act, but they rely on everyone else not being too smart. And I know there are people that probably heard him and was like, yeah, that's right. Trump is totally responsible for that ship. There you go. Incredible. Washington Post article following up, Trump is not done hammering Harvard University. Trump administration pulls another $60 million in Harvard grants in their third round of cuts. And again, I ask, how did we get to the point where they were living off government grant money in the first place? And if that's the case, why have they been charging so much for admission? The Department of Health and Human Services is terminating $60 million in federal grants to Harvard University, the latest escalation in the Trump administration's efforts to force change at some of the nation's most prominent universities. They were paid to make those changes in the first place. They can take the money to undo them. How about that? If you want to look at it as a business transaction, but once again, been pointed out several times, whether you like it or not, these universities and colleges are not entitled to tax money. They don't have to get a dime of your tax money. And I'd prefer they didn't. Quit giving money to Harvard and other universities so they can crank out morons and then fix the roads, why don't you? The Trump administration again cited anti-Semitism for its decision to pull funding with HHS, posting Monday on X that its decision to terminate multiple multi-year grants stems from the school's continued failure to address anti-Semitic harassment and race discrimination. It goes a lot deeper than that. That's just like the hot button topic on account of all of the protests that took place on college and university campuses, which we now know George Soros funded. And we read that article some months ago. that many of the agitators that were in those locations were not even from those universities, and they were connected to George Soros funded charities. Why isn't Soros under investigation, I wonder? Yeah, Phil says it sounds like a joke that Chuck is saying that it's Trump's fault. Schumer, it's Trump's fault for the boat accident. Yeah, it does sound like a joke, but it's not. He actually said that in an interview. Brian says a hurricane could happen and they'd blame Trump. Exactly. It's Trump's fault. Climate change. The announcement follows two larger Trump administration cuts at Harvard and brings the total funding loss in the past 6 weeks to $2.7 billion. The administration has also asked the IRS to revoke the school's tax-exempt status. I don't know why the school has a tax-exempt status, because they make a ton of money. We read a few days ago about the salaries of some of these higher faculty in Harvard University making millions every year, millions of dollars. How do you justify that? One guy was getting $6.2 million a year. How do you justify that at a so-called tax-exempt, non-profit university? And then their funding gets cut off, and they were like, no, we can cover it for now. Here's $240 million we had extra laying around. You've got plenty of money, Harvard. Give us a break. It says the Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism, formed by the administration to address complaints of discrimination on college campuses amid protests over the war, said in March it would be looking at more than $8.7 billion in multi-year grant commitments to Harvard. Yeah, because Harvard had almost $9 billion in grants lined up. That's right. And its affiliates to ensure the school is in compliance with federal rules. The task force includes representatives from HHS. That's Health and Human Services. HHS did not immediately return requests for comments, blah, blah, blah. Harvard, which did not immediately respond to a request, has long denied the administration's allegations that it let anti-Semitism spread on campus, saying it has taken many steps to address the problem and calling it our moral duty. Yeah, after they were called out on it. After they were called out on it, they wanted to act on it. But while they were getting billions of dollars in donations from Iran and from other neighbors that are not so neighborly, China, they let that go on for a long time on their campuses. And they didn't start rounding it up until it looked like Trump was going to win. They really didn't move on it. It says last week, the Trump administration terminated another $450 million in federal funding one day after the school sent a letter rejecting the administration's claims that it violates federal law. We read that story last week. Harvard filed a lawsuit in April seeking to block the administration from withholding federal funding, with President Alan Garber saying in a message to the university community that the Trump administration's actions are unlawful and beyond the government's authority. That's not true. Again, no college or university is entitled to federal tax money. So it doesn't matter what the reason is. The executive branch is offering reasons why, but technically they don't need a reason to cut off federal funding from an organization that is not entitled to it. All of these colleges, again, the universities, NPR, PBS, not entitled to federal money. And it begs the question, how did they survive before they were getting it? They managed, didn't they, for nonprofits? And I pointed back to when I was a kid and I used to watch PBS, and they used to do the PBS telethon. They do it like for a full week, once a year. Hey, this is how much we need to run the station for 1 year. Make a donation, or you can donate items and we'll sell it, and the proceeds will go right into the kitty. And they gave you exact dollars amounts on everything that they needed to do. And then somehow federal money started getting dumped into these organizations, and then they went nuts. And when you get that kind of money and you get a big bloated belly from it, I guess, you start getting really stupid about how it's spent. These colleges and universities have long since overstepped their authority with everything, coming up with all sorts of crazy ideas, spending money on things that it doesn't need to be spent on. And you see a lot of that in government agencies as well. You see a lot of that in government agencies as well. They get bloated. They get more money than they can possibly use, and they try to spend it without justification. And I'll give you a personal example. Some of you are aware that my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, is in a nursing home. And one of the things that is provided by the Social Security Administration is a card for essentials. Okay, it's basically a debit card, and it has a certain amount on it. I don't remember how much it is, but it's for essentials for the elderly person, and it goes to a proxy. In this case, the card was given to my wife. And so she could go and she can use it to swipe. It's supposed to be for things for the elderly person's personal use, hygiene products, whatever they need, toothpaste, baby wipes, leak pads, if they have bladder problems that you can put on the bed, stuff like this, right? Denture cream, you get the idea. And my wife is like, well, she's in a nursing home. That's all covered. What do I do with the card? You know what they tell her? Oh, we don't care. Spend it on whatever you want. Buy yourself stuff. We just need it to be spent. Yeah. You just need it to be spent, because if that money is not spent, you'll get less from the federal government to allocate next time. And that actually encourages organizations like this to overspend. If you don't use it or lose it, a lot of times is the rule of the day with much of this. I saw this also in Topeka. So, basically they were encouraging her to be fraudulent with the card, which she wasn't going to do. She wasn't going to do that. Another example was in Topeka when I was still living there. If you ever look at pictures of the Capitol building, there is a bronze statue of an Indian with a bow and arrow. Okay. When I first got to Topeka, when I first lived there, that statue was not on the roof of the Capitol building. The capital city, because Topeka is the capital city of Kansas, had a certain amount of money allocated to them by the federal government for construction projects. Well, they ran out of construction projects, and that's where they came up with the idea for putting the statue on the roof so they could spend it, because they were afraid they would get less next year. So they commissioned this big stupid statue, and then they spent a year trying to get it up on the roof, because I think it cost them like $250,000 just to put the thing on the roof. Worthless. You couldn't have found something, change out your stop signs, fix another road, anything, instead of just wasting this money. Seriously. Puck wants to know if I'm broadcasting from prison. If I was, there wouldn't be a door open. No, I'm not in prison. New location. The office just isn't set up yet. But a lot of these places, and if the money wasn't spent, it should be held for emergency use then, I think. Monkey says they've heard about how people would tell others about how they're lying to get on welfare, and even try to encourage me to lie to get benefits, which I hated and didn't do. Yeah, don't. You know what it is? You'd be the one to get caught up. But no, you shouldn't. But yeah, a lot of people scam systems. It's very common denominator to scam systems, unfortunately. And that's a way to scam the system. That's a way to scam the system. It's terrible. It's terrible. But again, encouraging you to lie or to misuse the system. Fluke Man wants to know if there'll be a cat tree behind me. If I get a new cat tree, I'll put it back there. I've got a couple. I've got a couple of cat condos. I don't know if I could try it. They don't always use them. A cat condo, brand new, a smack new, nice, happy looking cat condo, and they ignore it if you give them a paper bag or a cardboard box, and they love that. But yeah, I mean, I would put one back there. I don't care. I don't care. But it's just, again, that all ties in with just the incredible waste that we're all subjected to. The incredible waste. You're encouraged to waste, encouraged to be dishonest. It's one of the reasons I didn't like unions, where they were encouraging me to be dishonest. When I was having problems because of the situation with my ex and my son having to refuse overtime, and I was getting worried about it. And I tried to talk to the union, because that's what they're supposed to be there for, is to negotiate about things like that. And they didn't have any precedence for it. And they wanted me to fake an FMLA so that I could claim FMLA to bypass getting demerits on their system for refusing overtime. And I'm like, you're asking me to do something, you're trying to encourage me to do something illegal to bypass the system that you put in place, instead of working with me or negotiating with me, which management said they'd be happy to work with me, but they couldn't without the union's approval. Because I spoke to them too. Yeah, it's like, totally, dude, I get it, but I can't block that without the union approval. Union won't do it because they don't have precedence. So what's their solution? Oh, here, just do this. It's illegal, but who gives a shit? That's unions for you. That's unions for you. I get tired of it. You can get worn out with just how dishonest everything is in life. Just dishonest. I've talked about it before. I'm sure I've mentioned it before. The show Farscape. It was a sci-fi show from Canada. And in one episode of Farscape, a crew member had been kidnapped by pirates that were holding him for ransom. And they were trying to get him back. And they didn't have anything to trade except for food rations, old ones. And the guy just, after they fought, one of the crew just comes out and he just says, listen, we just want our guy back. We don't have anything to give you. We got old food cubes, is what he called it. We have old food cubes. They're not very good. We'll give you whatever you want, but we don't have any money. We don't have anything to trade for him. I'm sorry. I mean, what do you want from us? And the pirate is standing there looking at him for a while. And then he says, I'm sorry. It's been so long since I've heard the truth. It was hard to recognize it. Take him. Just take your man. Go on your way. I feel that way sometimes. I totally empathize with that entire scene. It's so long since you see the truth. You wonder what the hell it is or what it even looks like anymore. Even reading these news stories, you got to be careful. Anyone here ever heard of the Sir Roger de Coverley papers? I know I'm going down bunny trails here, but whatever. The Sir Roger de Coverley papers. Anyone ever heard of them? It used to be required reading in American high schools. And even when I was in high school, it was already gone. The Sir Roger de Coverley papers. Look it up. It's interesting. Basically, the reason why it was required reading was because it demonstrated one of the earliest examples of the press misleading the public and getting away with it. And it's from Yeah, Brian. He says, imagine if every human being was like Pinocchio when they lied. Watch the film. That only happened to him one time in the movie. Once his nose grew out. But that's what people basically remember. But in the Sir Roger de Coverley papers, and this was in the 1700s, when newspapers came out like once a week and it was printed on one side of a big sheet of paper, and three prominent writers who were working at at this newspaper came up with the idea of inventing a character for an expose to see if anyone would catch on. And they named that character Sir Roger de Coverley. And so every week they'd have a little block in their little, I don't know which section, celebrity news, whatever they had. And it's like a few words with Sir Roger de Coverley. And, you know, we're went along with this country gentleman to church this past Sunday, and you did this write something foolish. It's an interesting book because three different writers, famous writers from that time period, collaborated on it. And people were eating it up. They thought there was a Sir Roger de Coverley. People were trying to find out where the hell this guy was, or, you know, claiming that they knew him, or they really pulled the wool over the eyes of the entire community, trying to figure out who the hell Sir Roger de Coverley was. And because of that manipulation, that used to be required reading. Used to be required reading in American high schools. Not anymore. I have an original copy of the book. It's from the 40s, and it has all the high school stamps in it. It's downstairs. And Monkey says another big one is yellow journalism, where it caused a war to break out between the U.S. and Spain. And I've mentioned it before, Franklin Roosevelt was very instrumental in that. Very instrumental in that. And that's the bunny rabbit trail for today. So we get into this story, and I'm going to get to the thumbnail. Don't worry, it's coming. Wall Street Journal, because they passed this on, I think, yesterday afternoon. Democratic Congresswoman is charged over ICE facility incident in Newark. Because you remember 4 lawmakers, including the mayor in New Jersey, went to the ICE detention facility to virtue signal and got caught up. And part of the reason why they got caught up, why does it look like she's got a rope holding her pants up? Lady, that belt does not go with those jeans. And that's a lot of belly for those jeans too. If it looks like her snap is about to go out. I wish I had the strength of that loop and snap in my upper arm. Boy, I tell you what. But incredible. Incredible. One of the things that jumped things off was one of those representatives, because it was the mayor and 3 state representatives, got physical with the law enforcement agents that were out there. And, you know, that's basically one of the main reasons why they got arrested. Well, she's being charged now. The Justice Department is charging a Democratic Congresswoman with assault after a confrontation with federal law enforcement officials who arrested Newark's mayor outside of an immigration detention center in the New Jersey city earlier this month. Representative LaMonica McIver was charged with 2 counts of assault, resisting and impeding law enforcement officers after attempting to enter the Delaney Hall Detention Center with 2 other members of New Jersey's congressional delegation on May 9th during a protest at the facility. Alina Habba, the Trump-appointed acting U.S. attorney in New Jersey, said Monday that her office was also dropping a misdemeanor trespass charge brought against Newark's mayor, Ras Baraka, who was arrested after attempting to join them. She said she had invited Baraka to tour the facility. The government has nothing to hide at this facility. I will personally accompany the mayor so he can see that firsthand. Because, again, they went there to virtue signal because they wanted to demonstrate, oh, look, they won't let us in. It's a new trick that the Democrats have been doing for a few months now, Maxine Waters was at the forefront of that. At the Department of Education building, you show up at a federal building without an appointment and then whine when they won't let you in and act like you're being oppressed somehow. And there's Tuck. Tuck's joining us. Lucky wants to know, what was my high school? I went to Boston High School. I went to Boston High School. I didn't go to any fancy high school. It used to be the Abraham Lincoln School, and then they changed it to Boston High. Legend says, I thank you for the hope you've given me over the years. Even though I have to start looking for another job, I know there's another opportunity out there. Yeah, there is, Lucky. Or Legends, excuse me. There is. Yeah, you know, life's a roller coaster. Sometimes it's up and down, but I'm sure you'll be all right. Cap says, when were the days of universities actually being good and prestigious universities being even better, and everyone who would graduate would go on to become very successful? Now college is useless. The last heyday of universities was in the 60s. That's when it started to die, because the children of the beatnik generation became the hippies. And the hippie generation is where things started to get really wonky in colleges and universities across the United States. So from the early 70s on, they started getting weird. And by the late 90s, early 2000s, had gone completely astray. But yeah, you can trace that back to the beatnik generation. Puck says, my great-grandfather was a newsman during the Spanish-American War. His employer was the Hearst family that pressured him to write stories to promote the war. Interesting. Interesting. But yeah, here we go. She will have charges pressed against her for assault because she did get physical with the law enforcement officers who were trying to get her to back out of the gate, because she's a lawmaker and thinks that she can do whatever the hell she wants, like most of them. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible? I wish I had that kind of pull. Wish I had that kind of pull, ladies and gentlemen. I could just do whatever the hell I want, walk all over everybody, go wherever I want, and carry on and act a damn fool. Let me pause this. There's a video clip associated with this story. This is the thumbnail coming up here. Big prison escape. And it's pretty stupid. It's pretty stupid. And I'll read this one from Fluke Man real quick. It says, funny they didn't go to a juvenile detention center and ask kids if there's anything they need. I know they're there for a reason, but some probably mixed in the wrong crowd, just needs the right mentor. No, because they're virtue signaling. Completely. They're checking boxes. They don't give a shit about those people in that detention center. They could go to a state-run old age home. Those places are usually in disrepair. They do the best they can, but they're usually in disrepair. They have poor funding. Go to an old age home that's run by the state, that's not a fancy one. Go to a group home and check in on some of those abandoned kids who are probably going to end up in juvenile detention because they've been treated so badly or because they had such a bad upbringing. There's so much you could do. Go to an animal shelter. There's real problems right in your own backyard, and you're worrying about illegal immigrants because it's the proper thing to do. Or not the proper thing to do, but the expected thing to do currently in the media. But here's your thumbnail. USA Today article, New Orleans jail escape. What are the odds that all the fugitives will be caught? They'll all get caught. They'll all get caught. Says the whereabouts of 6 inmates who ran from a New Orleans jail by climbing through a hole behind a toilet remain unknown. Experts say there is strong likelihood the escapees will get caught eventually. Yeah, they'll get caught sooner or later. As law enforcement officials hunt for the escapees, the odds of their recapture are very high. Well over 90% of inmates who escape will be recaptured. Peterson, also a senior research scientist at CNA Center for Justice Research and Innovation, said May 19th. And with some of New Orleans inmates facing long sentences, the national media attention and federal, state, and local authorities all working together, I'd put the figure at closer to 100%. It says originally 10 inmates ranging in age from 19 to 42 escaped from the Orleans Parish Prison early May 16th. The inmates pulled a defective cell door off of its tracks and escaped through a hole in the wall behind a toilet and sink, according to authorities. The inmates faced charges ranging from aggravated assault to murder. Exactly how long the fugitives can avoid capture depends on how much planning they put into their escape, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, and I'm going to play this video clip for you. I'm going to try to blow it up so you can see the whole thing. I'm going to run this video clip with no sound. This is the security camera at the prison watching them run away. It looks like more than 10, but 10 of them ran away. A guard was not on duty. He went to get lunch. And the monitors, of course, are active monitors, which means someone is supposed to be sitting there looking at them. He wasn't at his post. They saw that he wasn't at his post, so the 10 of them racked that door, or however many there were. I believe there was more than 10, but they racked the door until it slipped the tracks and fell out, and then escaped through an alleged hole behind a toilet. And I don't know how there was a hole behind a toilet that freaking big. I mean, how big are the rats in the Orleans Parish? Anybody? Brian says all the guys who escaped in the picture look like the kind of guys who can't be hard to find. Most of the time, they're stupid enough to go right back to their families, and that's how they get caught. But here's the video clip. I'll run it real quick. Here we go. There they are, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was their security camera footage. That's an ad that I don't need to see because social media. If you're in my age category, you're of the last generation. Here we go. This is them working the cell. You're of the last generation of people to know what it's like to live in a world with no social media. Do you realize that? If you're in my age category or older, you're amongst the last people on earth to know what it's like to live without social media. You are. I don't know if that makes us special, maybe. Because we got along fine without it, didn't we? We got along fine without it. Nash says you're a boomer. No, I'm not that old. A boomer would be somebody from like after around the World War II era. I'm not that old. I'm Generation X. And Puck says, remember this prison was built by the lowest bidder. Pretty much, that's how it's done. I know the term boomer gets thrown around indiscriminately now, usually as an insult, though, to anybody who's like over the age of 30 and somebody wants to be snarky, they'll call them a boomer. But yeah, we're amongst the last generation. I think Generation X might be the last grouping. Or no, the next one after that, to grow up with no social media and knows what that feels like. And now that we have social media, we have generations of people who meticulously record everything that they do, no matter how trivial and useless. hoping that they'll somehow be famous. It's incredible. Lucky says only doctors should have pagers. Yeah. Does anybody still have pagers anymore besides Chris from Family Guy? And that one guy from Tron who still had a pager in the second film. So yeah, they escaped. They escaped. Four of them have been caught. And the others will also likely get caught because they're not that smart. Most people are not. They'll make contact with an old girlfriend or their mama or their brother or somebody, their sister. They'll reach out to someone and they'll get caught up. They'll be found out or they'll be ratted on by someone looking for a bump, looking for some cash. I saw that. I was in South Carolina this past weekend. My wife and I had to drive down there real quick for something. And there was a sign, there was a billboard. I can't remember the kid's name. It was this picture of this adolescent or young teen white kid. And it said $30,000 reward for information leading to the capture of whoever murdered our son. And I'm like, yeah, if I knew $30,000, well, if it were for a murder, I'd probably just tell anyway. A real murder, especially a child. But yeah, these people, they got relatives that'll turn them in for a Wendy's gift card. Believe it. They took the shot for less. Here, put some poison in me for free coffee and a donut. Let me run down to Krispy Kreme and get my show my little card to show that I complied. That's the world we live in. Thank you, social media. You've done so much for us. Telegraph article. I thought this was very interesting. Why isn't this major news? Why isn't this everywhere? Chinese kill switches have been found in U.S. solar farms. Our solar farms are sabotaged, or they're set up for sabotage. And a British firm found out about it. Chinese kill switches have been found hidden in American solar farms, prompting calls for Ed Miliband to halt the rollout of renewables. On Thursday, the Energy Secretary was urged to impose an immediate pause on his green energy blitz to review whether United Kingdom solar plants are at risk. The components found in the U.S. included cellular radios capable of switching off equipment remotely, raising serious concerns about grid security. They were found inside power inverters manufactured by unnamed Chinese companies. Power inverters are the key links between solar or wind farms, and the rest of the power system, converting their electricity so the wider grid can use it. One source told Reuters that compromising such equipment would give Beijing the ability to inflict blackouts on the West, claiming that it could create a built-in way to physically destroy that grid. China, however, has dismissed the claims. Of course, but the equipment's there, isn't it? It isn't it. It's there. And the UK now is concerned about the farms that they've been building with the same equipment. Same equipment. So our solar farms have kill switches built in, hidden inside the technology that we're currently trying to scramble to remove. And this is not national news. Has anybody heard this? I got to find out, looking at UK news outlets, that we're having a problem here. Not that if all the solar and wind farms were to be shut down in the US, it would really affect much, because they contribute almost nothing to the grid. Again, what is it, 1,700 solar farms producing 1% of our grid? It's pretty worthless. pretty worthless. Let me catch up a couple of comments here. Cap says you should do a video about what life was like before social media and technology and what will happen if social media and technology disappears and never comes back. If you've never experienced it, most people wouldn't know what to do. Phil says, I know it's stupid what I'm about to say, but I was not sure about the shot. I found out my side job at the time was giving out $100 bonuses for getting the shot. I got it for that. Wow. Hopefully you're okay. You didn't do any boosters, did you? Nash says the hidden solar kill switches are ancient Chinese secret. Yep. That was that detergent commercial. Which detergent was that? Where they would find out it was an all temperature cheer or something. And how do you get your whites so white? Ancient Chinese secret. Ancient Chinese secret, huh? There's a Saturday Night Live sketch with Jackie Chan in the 90s, back when that show was still funny, where they made fun of that commercial. And they did it all the way up to the end where the guy goes, ancient Chinese secret, huh? And then Jackie Chan jumps over the counter and threatens his life and tells him, it's secret, you understand? I kill you. Incredible. Phil says no boosters and he's okay. Wow. Calgon. Laura says it's Calgon. Thank you. I can't remember everything. I try. Puck says if it wasn't for Trump's tariffs, they could buy more booby-trapped Chinese equipment. Exactly. Exactly. Because that's what we need. More booby-trapped equipment. And speaking of boobies, no, we're not going to go there. We're going to go to a different kind of booby. I give you Bernie Sanders. Not Colonel Sanders. Bernie Sanders, Mr. Underbite. Bernie Sanders. The most Democrat, far left, bleeding heart Democrat independent I've ever seen or heard of, admitting that the Democratic Party is useless in a recent interview. I guess he's starting to lose his marbles. Fox News article, Bernie Sanders agrees that the Democratic Party is a threat to democracy. Either that or the interviewer was just really clever. So Bernie Sanders agreed with Andrew Schultz and Akash Singh on Monday, who argued the Democratic Party has completely robbed their constituents of the democratic process, and that the party is a threat to democracy. Over the last 4 elections, this is a quote from Schultz, over the last 4 elections, Democrats, we felt that we didn't have a say on who could be president. We talk a lot about the Republicans being autocrats or oligarchs and taking over democracy, but from the Democratic perspective, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, I felt like the Democratic Party completely removed the democratic process from its constituents, and I think they need to have some accountability for that. And Bernie Sanders says he couldn't argue with that statement. No argument here. The Vermont senator has been touring the country with Representative AOC for their Fighting the Oligarchy tour, which has been drawing large crowds. And we all know about him in the Fight the Oligarchy tour. He is an oligarch. I don't care what he says. Schultz said he felt the party stole the nominations from Sanders in 2016, excuse me, when he narrowly lost the Democratic primary to establishment favorite Hillary Clinton, who went on to lose to Trump. Now, if he's an independent, he sure does kowtow to the Democratic Party. When they came to him and asked him to walk away so Hillary could run, he sure freaking did it. He sure did it. And I'll be honest, Schultz says again, it broke my heart when you supported them. Okay? Now, this is Sanders talking. In the world that I live in, You've got a choice. Yeah, it's nice that he has choices because I don't. And I know a lot of people, including my wife, agree with you, but you're down to a choice. Is it going to be Hillary Clinton or is it going to be Donald Trump? Not a great choice. So you're saying that Hillary and Trump are not great choices, or were not great choices for 2016. But you still kowtowed to the Democratic Party, even though you claim to be independent, and gave the nomination to Hillary, even though now you're sitting there in hindsight saying that they weren't good choices. I'm not going to argue the point, and that's why I'm proudly independent. Schumer had asked, could we not also say ostensibly there hasn't been a fair primary for the Democrats since 2008, and are they not also a threat to democracy? And Sanders says, yes, they are, but that's why he's proudly independent. He's far from independent. He's not independent. He's always sided with the Democrat Party. He's always kowtowed to them. He gave up the presidential run for Hillary Clinton, claims to be independent, and says that Hillary's a bad choice. Well, he said, to be fair, Hillary and Trump were bad choices. I mean, seriously, this guy. Luke Man says Trump has or will rehire servicemen and women to pay for all the years they missed out on who got fired for not taking the jab. A lot of people lost their jobs. And I've argued that point. They're sitting there right now, that have been for the last year or more, complaining, we don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough firefighters. We don't have enough EMTs. We don't have enough police. We don't have enough people working in the prisons. We don't have enough sanitation workers. We don't have enough people in water and sewage. You fired them all. You discharged them for choosing not to receive the jab. You fired these people for a personal choice about their health, which should be unconstitutional, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can correct me there. And then you have the nerve to complain you don't have enough people in those jobs. It's your fault. The government did that to these people. And Marvel fans here, the government did that to these people as state, local, federal, all levels. All levels. You threatened people. You said, oh, you have a choice. Did they really? Because a lot of these people got terminated for that and may not have been eligible for unemployment. May not have been eligible. Monkey says, I might sound shilling, but I'd say that Bernie could have just ran independent and bring up percentages to make third parties more popular, but no, he shilled to the Democrats. He did. Whatever the deal was, he knuckled under for them, like he always does. That's what Puck says. Independents are liberals that are afraid of being associated with Democrats. So they want to act like they're not associated. And Lucky says the military, of course. Yeah, a lot of military personnel were discharged unjustly. Unjustly. But yeah, I'll give you now the U.S. debt clock, which has projected Doge savings at $453 billion, which should save each taxpayer ultimately $4,034. Keep it going, guys, because they've only just cracked the surface. I don't even think that they're into, I don't think they're into a dozen agencies yet. But they have over 420 government agencies they're supposed to ultimately look at. So we'll see how that works out. We'll see how that works out. Anything that lessens the burden on taxpayers that isn't really hurting anybody. But with that, we're at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start signing out. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk from a new location. And you can find me Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Coffee Talk on YouTube. And again, if you're watching this on Prepper University right now, please also do subscribe to the Coffee Talk channel, because in the first week of June, I will cease podcasting to Prepper University so that I can, and just do it exclusively on the Coffee Talk channel, so that I can get the Prepper University channel back on course to talking about prepper related and homesteading related type stuff. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. So thank you everyone for joining us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will catch you again tomorrow.